Welcome to Love. Welcome to the Love Doctor. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to session.
Hello, ladies.
Okay, let's start again. Cut. All right, guys, welcome to session 2 of Love. I will remind you what I said in the last session. If there was only one module of OMG that I could share with someone over and over, that will make the greatest impact, that will make everything else irrelevant, will make the rest of OMG irrelevant. Like you wouldn't even need to think about it. It would be this month. It would be the month of love. And remember, at this level, I'd rather not call it the month of love. I'd rather change the title to Who Am I? Because that's what really it's about. Who am I? Who are you? Okay. Now, last session, I got you guys to ponder on that statement. I left you with that statement. I said, the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of, and I didn't tell you what it was. I got you to go back and listen to the OMG video 3, was it? Video 3, where I actually discussed that. So does anyone remember what, or does anyone identified what it is or realize what it is? The only fear we have as human beings is the fear of, someone say it.
Love and the rejection of love.
Love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll talk about rejection in a second, right? So the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love. Now, let's break this down. Does anyone want to tell me what they're pondering on that is before we actually do break it down?
How do you mean?
Well, your homework was to go ponder on that.
Statement on what?
Yeah, the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love.
Yeah.
How so? How so? That's the question. How so?
I think what I came up with is the fear of the part that's frightful is the fear of intimacy, of being close to somebody else. You know, of being vulnerable. Maybe is the best way to put it.
It's not that that's not true. That's not the answer I'm looking for.
Okay.
I mean, when we realize the answer we're looking for, that you'll realize where what you said fits into that, but that's not and the funny thing is you already know the answer. It's not new. It's already in OMG.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, what I'm sharing with you is not new. You know, I'm intending to take you to a deeper place, a newer place, if you like, but none of this is new. None of what I share is new. We've already covered it. It's just to go deeper.
I feel like I know what answer you're going with, but I don't I feel like we still have to get there or whatever, you know?
Yeah, okay.
So I don't want to get to what I think the intellectual answer is, but the first thing that I feel like the human part of us experiences is which is in relation to I think the ultimate answer that you're going for is a feeling of unworthiness that comes up from feeling that sense of vastness, you know, or bigness.
Okay, so okay, I see what you're saying. But being unworthy, it's not true that we feel unworthy. Okay, we create to feel unworthy because we're afraid. We are afraid of the bigness, of the vastness. Okay, we're not unworthy. We fear the love itself. Okay, so it's all right to go there because I'll break it all down now. Right? Did you want to say something, Jamie?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just put this in there on my ponderings, and I said this to you before. I feel like we fear love because love, when we are in love, we being this body, a human experience, it's like duality goes, it's oneness, and experience of oneness. So there's like death in that almost. So I feel like I'm seeing it still through an ego, from a space of ego.
Well, let's talk about death, right? Because we've spoken about a little bit about that. And the guys who are in Spain, we spoke about that for 4 or 5 days. Well, whenever we had time in those 4 or 5 days when we went out partying and drinking. But this is where we'll break it down, Kira. Okay, so let me tell you something, right? Because this is a huge statement that was made in that OMG program, all right? This statement was, we'll capture it. The only fear we have, not the biggest, the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love itself. Right? And that's what I asked you to ponder on. Why would we fear love? If it's no questions for a time being, I've already started, sorry. I'll come back to questions again. Why would we fear something that we're yearning for? The only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love itself. To grasp that, I need to dissect a few other statements we've made through WTF or through other OMGs. Okay? We speak about, like in the last segment, we spoke about the fear of death. Okay? So then, what is the fear of death itself? We've spoken about, the fear of rejection. All right. Where and how does the fear of rejection show up? We need to understand these other things. Something really powerful that we spoke about in Spain, which I want to bring to the table here, is that there's actually no greater fear than the fear of death itself. Okay, now that's a different statement, because the statement I just made before, the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love, right? But there's no greater fear, right, than the fear of death, right? You may think that's conflicting, because you're saying the only fear we have is the fear of love. Then you say there's no greater fear than the fear of death. And in the WTF, we also talk about that, hang on a sec, the greatest fear we have, if I can take you back to the WTF, I always say that the greatest fear, they say that the number one fear we have as human beings is, number one, the fear of public speaking, number two, the fear of death. We break that down, we understand it's not the fear of public speaking, it's the fear of being rejected. And it's not the fear of rejection, it's actually the fear of not being loved, because if you're rejected, you're not being loved. So the number one fear, we say, is the fear of not being loved. And then we say number two is the fear of death. Now, that's something that's there for the WTF, and I break down what they say. They say the number one fear is fear of public speaking, whatever, and I break that down and go, well, it's not public speaking, it's this. In Spain, we spoke about that, and this is the question I posed to the guys. I actually said, there's actually no greater fear than the fear of death. If you had no fear of death, you would have no fear of living. Okay, so what that means is that all your fears, and stay with me, because there's three different components I'm talking about here. All your fears stem from the fear of death. Your fear of not being loved, your fear of failure, your fear of not being good enough. Like, we went through this, and this is the question I posed for the guys. I said, if you were not afraid of dying, would you still have those fears? If you had no fear of dying, and again, remember, no fear of dying means you're free to fully live. It doesn't mean you're going to die, right? You're free to fully live out what you're here to live out. If you had no fear of dying, would you still have the fear of all the other fears that you have? And one of those questions that we also ask is, would you still be afraid of not being loved? Would you still be afraid of being rejected? And I leave that for the rest of you to ponder on, okay? Because it was a huge statement. We talked about death, and I said there's no greater fear than the fear of death. And then everyone in the group went, well, what about love? The fear of not being loved, isn't that greater? But then the question was, if you had no fear of dying, would you still have a fear of not being loved? Now, on an intellectual level, you might answer yes, but let's stay with me for a sec. Last session, we also talked about those common points about death. You know, we spoke about when someone has had a near-death experience, you always notice that, they come back after the near-death experience and they're always living for the moment and only doing the things that they love to do. So what does that mean? It means like they want to fully live. Like, what happened when they had a near-death experience? What happened in that moment? What has happened for them to come back and go, I just want to be myself. I just want to do what I love to do. And I want to live for the moment, which is the advice that we give to everyone that we mostly dearly love. The greatest advice that's mostly given. Just be yourself and just do what you love and embrace the moment. I'll add that one in. But it's always that. Just be yourself, honey, and just do what you love to do. Why does someone who's had a near-death experience commonly come back and they're just being themselves and just doing what they love to do? Do you mind just close that door for me, please? Thanks. So I'll leave that with you. Okay, it's a little bit about death. So let's just wait for Jamie. Let's talk about how what we just broke down, right? Let's talk about how that relates to this topic or this statement that the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love itself. Before I share what I've got to share with you on that, is there anyone else? Does anyone else have any thoughts or comments on why that is possibly true? That the only fear we have is the fear of love itself. Why would we fear love? Yes, Anna.
Well, in my pondering, love is the nothingness. And for me, like, who's breathing? It's the nothingness. And it's like, I realize the nothingness breathes, and it's almost like I seemingly appear. And then I go back. So it's like, I'm not even fucking here. Like, it is the nothingness. That is the love, the space, the nothingness.
Yeah.
That is huge. That was huge for me.
Yeah. The nothingness.
The nothingness. And so I feel like the people...
What's so scary about the nothingness? That's the thing. Why would we fear that?
You don't exist there.
It's the unknown.
In the moment when I'm having this deep pondering, it's like there's there's no fear, but then I feel like I just go back into my body. And I don't know if it's so huge, or is it that then my mind tries to go, but you're not even, like, it's just, I breathe and I appear. I exhale and I'm gone. It is, yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's truly when you realize that your form and who you thought you were.
Okay.
Is.
Let me add this to what Anna's saying. Thank you, Anna. There's two different interpretations of this, because there's two parts of you that interpret this, right? One is what Jamie was just screaming out on the side here, is because you don't exist in the nothingness. That's the ego, right? The ego is afraid of the nothingness, because if it goes into the nothingness, it becomes nothing, like it doesn't exist, right? Which is true in the oneness. There is no ego, right? But we've spoken about that, and that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm talking about your soul that is afraid. Your soul, because they're like, and I'm telling you now, if your soul was not afraid of love, your journey is complete. It doesn't mean you're done here. It means you're free to live here. This is what I talk about being an infinite being in a finite world. And such a journey, as we have all learned to understand and experience. It doesn't just happen. Okay? But that is the journey. So yes, one is the ego and the role that plays in going, I'm afraid of the nothingness. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about your soul, which is the drop of the ocean itself, right? The ego is your perceived drop of the self. It's how it sees itself as the drop, okay? But your soul is the part of you. In the beginning, there was one infinite energy. The one infinite energy manifested itself into billions of parts. That's the part of you that perceives that there's something missing, something's not whole, something's not complete. The ego then hijacks that and goes, well, let's look for it. It's in the other drop. It's somewhere outside of ourselves, because the ego only perceives separation. Okay? Now, I won't go into ego because we've covered ego, but you know that the ego has a role there, and it's not that it's bad. That actually makes your experience possible, if you like. It's part of your infinite self that created that, so you can perceive that there's Johnny, and Johnny's not me. If you believe Johnny was you from the beginning, you couldn't have this human experience. You perceive Johnny to be completely different to you. So the ego's role continuously takes your attention out to separation, and the separation being something other than you. But really, it's actually you. But there's a soul there. And my work, this whole work, is always speaking to the soul. Where you feel this, your soul feels this. Your soul yearns this. Yet the soul is afraid of the complete. Remember, in OMG, I talked about the expansiveness of this, or what's the word I used in it? Hey? Not the vastness. It was the
momentousness.
No, close. I'll talk about. Hey?
Magnitude.
What? No, not magnitude. Does anyone remember in OMG? Actually, I have a word, and I actually went. Is that even a word? Hey?
Yeah.
Enormity.
Enormity.
Yeah. That's it.
you're afraid of the enormity, because the soul is like has believed that the ego and has gone, yes, well, this is who we are. Okay, I've experienced this, and that's how I know this. When I say I've experienced this, I'm not talking about the enormity. I'm talking about being afraid of the enormity. Two times in my life, very more, but 2 times. There's more. There's been times, especially when I'm asleep and I get taken on a journey to get shown something. I trembled. Okay, but 2 times in my life I remember that involved my mother. The other times didn't involve my mother, just involved me going on some journey. And I remember one was when I was in LA, and this is how I know what I'm speaking to you about. This, if you can understand this, you'll understand the fear of death. The ego's fear of death is the fear of the unknown. The soul's fear of death is the fear of the actual power. Remember, in OMG, I talk about you're the drop of the ocean. After a while, when you start to believe that drop of the ocean, your soul is who you are, but the soul knows that there's so much more to you, because the soul, the drop of the ocean, is the ocean. So of course it sensed that its whole life, but the ego has gone, no, that's not who we are. We're actually in this world, and that's what the world is, and da da da. But the soul's always gone, no, there's something more. And that's why when someone is a truth seeker, it's the soul's journey. It's the soul's yearning. The soul believes that it has to fit this entire ocean, the enormity of this ocean, into this bottle. Well, you'd shit yourself too. That's the way I describe it in the WTF. And I say it in the WTF that we fear the truth of who we are. We fear love itself. And as Nelson Mandela said in his speech, we fear light, not the darkness. Our greatest fear is our power. We are afraid of our own power. That's why we fear death. Again, the ego's fear of death is the fear of the unknown. So, 2 points in my life. One, I'll never forget. And again, the only way I could experience this was in a dream. And I think Jamie remembers once I was in LA and I had this experience through a dream where I was, and I've never shared this with anyone, and I'll share it with you, but these 2 reference points stand out. Like I said, there's been multiple, but these 2 related to my mum, and they stood out mostly to me. And I remember I was just in this room, and in the top corner of this room, there was a hole that went out to I don't know where. But I was just in this room. The room is my house. The room is my space. But for 1 second, whatever that was in that hole that was observing me allowed me to go there to observe me. And I went to what's in that hole, which was just nothing, right? And mate, I crumbled. I trembled. I woke up screaming and just crying. I grabbed my phone, and I would never even do this. Now, in my dream, it was my mother watching me. I don't know where that locked in there, but my mother had to do something to do with this experience. And I grabbed my phone. I never ring my mum about this stuff, especially if I'm crying, because I don't normally cry in front of my mum. I never have, really. I'll probably have. I'll just lie, but not about this stuff. And I grabbed my phone and I rang my mum in Australia, and I was like, what the hell do you have? Like, I just told her about this dream and I was crying as I'm telling her. I couldn't speak. To me, it has to be shown to me in a dream. It can't be shown you know, the only way it can be shown in the story is if the wall just disappeared and you looked out. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen, is it? Because it just, that ruins your whole story. So this is the way I experienced it. That's the way I experienced it. It was so big that I'm telling you, I could not breathe and tell my mum about what I'm experiencing right now. And I don't know what it had to do with my mum, but there was something in that hole watching me and I wasn't afraid of it. And there was an association with my mother. Like almost it was my mum watching, but it wasn't. It was something. And then when I was invited to watch myself, boom. So another one was recent, only about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. And this happened when I was sleeping in the bed with Sally and Orlando. And recently, because of this experience, I've been sleeping by myself because I know if there's more to come, I want to be able to experience it. And Sally doesn't even know this, but when I had this experience, I woke up screaming. She didn't even catch it. I woke up trembling. So this is my journey, right? I'll tell you more about the journey in a second. But again, the dream or the experience was, and again, for you, it's not listening to what I'm actually saying here. We understand that, right? You guys are feeling what I'm saying to you because that's ultimately what Amy, as Amy's listening to me, she's yawning. So I hope you're feeling what I'm saying because you can't give this to you. It was given to me. I'm just giving you what I felt, okay? It's the feeling from that. And I'm dreaming. And then I woke up in my mother's bedroom, my mother's bed, not with her in there, just me, right? Because that's weird. No, just me. I wake up and I remember waking up and I'm in my mother's room, in her bed, right? And again, this is now, I'm waking up in my mother's space because I told my mum about this dream. This time I wasn't a mess. I was fine because I think I could take it a bit more. And I said, I had this dream. And then she was like, yeah, you came into my space, right? But what happened when I woke up in her room, right? There was something outside of the room I could feel again, right? And as the door opened for that something outside to walk in, gone again. This is our greatest fear. You came here to be the one. But how can you if you fear it? None of this stuff that we talk about has any relevance if you had the willingness and the ability, willing and able, to walk through that door and know who you are. I'm sharing with you my personal experience. I'm sharing with you how much fear, and again, it's not fear like you're afraid of it. It's just the enormity of it. It feels like you blow up. It really does feel like you're feeling the whole ocean into this. That's the love. That's how big it is. And I'm talking about my personal experience, and trust me, I'm working very hard on myself to capture this, to become this. All these other things that we talk about in all the other OMG modules becomes irrelevant. You just do. You don't, like, it's just, I'll just say it's irrelevant. Remember, all these other months of OMG, you may ask yourself then, why are we doing all these other months of OMG? Why don't we just do this? Because I need 12 different ways of me to get deeper in you, to share what there is to be shared, not me get deep in you, to share what there is to be shared, to land deeper in you. If we said the same thing over and over again, your ego might shut off and not entertain it. 12, you guys know this. You remember when I used to come to LA and OMG, I didn't hide this. I would tell people in OMG. I'm actually saying the same thing over and over again in 12 different ways. Oh, well, let's talk about willingness. Let's talk about wealth. Let's talk about, I think the only thing that's different is probably the, reclaiming power or pondering. They're more processes. The processes are, I guess they're a process, but they're all taking you to the same place. So all the different processes are also the same, but at least they're a little bit different. They're a process. So I felt to share with you the enormity by sharing this experience that I have had recently. One was in LA, one was only recent. Okay. But there's nothing else to talk about. That is what you fear. That is why there's a fear of death. That is the number one fear we have, is the fear of death. If you weren't afraid of dying, if you knew who you are and realized that death is an illusion, there is no such thing as death, what do you think? I mean, you don't even care about how that would change your life. Because that's all there is. Like, you've got to the truth. I mean, I'm almost saying, do you know how it would change your life? Like, you don't give a shit about that anymore. Oh, my life would be so different. I wouldn't have to work for a living. I wouldn't. I can't even say it. I can't even try. I went to say it. I was like, really? You don't even give a shit. But that's why the other fucking 11 months become irrelevant. But when you first get your ego to agree with you to come on this journey, and that's what you do, you're almost negotiating at the very beginning when you start with this journey, you're negotiating with your ego to come on this journey. You negotiate your ego by, the ego is influenced by the outcome and result of how it will change, how much power you'll gain, how much controllability you will attain by getting this stuff. That's why, like, when I was trying to say that how it would change your life, I can't even say it because that becomes totally irrelevant. So there's no words I could use to describe what I wanted to share with you today. So I instead used something where I have had an experience and felt the enormity of that. If you're just listening to my words, you'll be like, oh, that's a nice dream. Hopefully you felt what I was saying. And those who are here live with me have felt it much deeper than, no, I'm just kidding. So I'll leave that with you. Where it lands, it's something, and maybe you've had an experience of the enormity. Is that actually a word? It is, eh? It is a word. I thought I made something up, but that's the word that keeps coming to me, the enormity. So I'm glad we rediscovered what that word was. So here's the thing. Here's the process for you. There's only one process for this, and it's been taught to me from my mother from the very beginning. It started off with, Amir, just stop every day and take 3 deep breaths. And I remember I was running my company, Global One, and I was, you know, I felt I was intuitive, but didn't know any of this stuff. Like my mom just always said, you could do it. Just do what you love. That's all I would do. Just do what I love. And no matter what anyone says, you can do it. If anyone threatens you, you just keep doing it. That was my principle. I would just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Life's a party. Just party. This is what I lived by when I first started. That was it. Just party. Have sex. Enjoy. You know, this is what my mom was telling me. You know, don't be afraid. Have girlfriends. Enjoy yourself. Go, and life is a party. No wonder I was partying. So, but one thing when I went to my mom and you guys have heard the story, so I won't go into it, and went, all right, what do you know? Like, it's like this experience I have with this dream. I'm just like, fucking, who is my mom? If I say my mom will go, she'll go to me, I'm not your mom. Or what does she represent? You know? It's like that song, what if God was one of us? It is. It's one of us. In all of us. But in all of us, it only becomes the one when you realize if you have the willingness to go there. That is your greatest fear. But we get entrapped in all the other fears. Oh, I'm afraid of not being loved, and I'm not afraid of this. And by the way, just to finish off that, because there was one other point of that, which I talk about in the video 3 of OMG on Love. Actually, I have it in my notes. This is important to finish off with this before we go on to the process. So I said here, the only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love itself. The fear, number one, the fear of the enormity of love. And number 2, the fear of being rejected by it. Okay? We're so afraid of deciding to do what we love because we're so afraid that if it doesn't happen, then it would feel as though we had been rejected by love. So I'm not talking about the rejection that you may have by other people. That's the ego again. I'm talking about your soul's fear here. The soul fears the enormity of the love, and it also fears because it feels I love to do something, right? And it feels like the ego thinks, what if it doesn't work? The soul doesn't feel it's not going to work. It knows it's going to, but there is just one little bit that it goes, if it doesn't work, because remember, it's always negotiating with the ego. If it doesn't work, it means I'm unloved by that enormity. Think about it. How many times do you really want to do something and you're just afraid of it being wrong, and why are you so afraid of being wrong? Why are you afraid of it not happening? What's the big deal? If you go and peel the layers of the onion back and get to the core, it means the feeling came for you to do it, you did it, and then it left you stranded. It means it doesn't love me. The soul's not loved. And again, the only reason it thinks that it might not happen is because the ego is going, what if it doesn't happen? How much rejection do you feel? Again, this is all an internal process. The ego is more external, and it's thinking itself, what if it doesn't happen externally? What would people think of me? The soul is thinking, what does love think of me? So That's where that comes from. The only fear we have as human beings is the fear of love itself. Number one, the fear of the enormity of love. Number two, the fear of being rejected by it. We're so afraid of deciding to do what we love because we're so afraid that if it doesn't happen, then it would feel as though we had been rejected by love. Why you don't have what you love is because you haven't truly loved it. Yes, you may feel as though it is true for you, but you haven't yet become one with it by deciding it's done. Okay? That decision of, the wholehearted decision, like, we don't make that wholehearted decision because we're like, what if it doesn't happen? That's it. Like, that's it. What if it doesn't happen? That's the biggest thing that stops you from making a wholehearted decision. Because you don't have, okay, so I'll read that last bit again. Why you don't have what you love is because you haven't truly loved it. Yes, you may feel it's true for you, but you haven't yet become one with it by deciding it's done. Because you don't have the capacity to love it, space. And therefore, you don't have the capacity to receive it. I'll post that up on the WhatsApp. To overcome the fear of death, one must realize that there is no such thing. Okay, we've already spoken about that. Now I want to give you a meditation or a breathing technique or a process, right, for the one. Breathe in. You're going back to the ocean. Breathe out. The ocean comes into this drop. Breathe in. And you can only breathe in so much because once the drop comes back to the ocean, it's full. Breathe out. The ocean is coming back to the drop. It'll take you a few practices. That's the opposite. That's where I was going with this. One was a breathing technique for the drop. This is the breathing technique for you to become aware of the one moving. Remember, we talked about, I want to see the feeling that moves me. I want to see the energy that moves me. Not connect to the energy. That's the drop wanting to do that. That's the soul. The only way I practice not to be afraid is to notice it move me. To notice it move me. That's my practice. I become aware of it moving me rather than me trying to get the enormity of it in me. Okay? Do this practice. We just flipped it. Can you guys feel that? When we just did that breathing technique just then, did you just feel the difference straight away? Yeah? It's opposite. You're breathing in. It's going back into the ocean. Where's the ocean? Right here. Breathe in, look. The ocean is here. Yeah, Lily. Lily always says that. Breathe out. You come as form. You do this, you'll start to notice it's not you. And that's why I asked the question, who's breathing? It's different. I was speaking to my mother about this, okay? This is how I came to share this with you guys, because I had that dream recently and my mum was at my house and I said, Mum, I've got to tell you about this dream. And I told her about it and she told me exactly what's going on. And she was telling me it's time for you to complete this for yourself. Okay. I won't really tell you about that journey. It sounds like too much like the Matrix, right? But she said to me, you just need to see who's breathing. The breath is going in, it's going out. This was about a month ago. I've been practicing this for over a month. So this is something new. But what I started to realize is when I'm noticing the breath, I would always notice it from the drop where the breath was going in, but then the breath would go out to infinity. But this flipped it. As I began to notice the breath is going to infinity, to the ocean, then the ocean is breathing. And I started to feel and sense differently when I started to breathe that way. And that's why I asked you immediately as we changed that 180 degrees, did you feel the difference? Because I did. As I started to perceive, or I started to observe is probably the word I'm looking for, the breath, the opposite way, breathing in. Because if you're noticing, you're trying to observe the feeling that you're being moved by, you're looking for the one energy rather than connecting to it. It's already here, right? So the breath going in to ocean, coming in to form. Okay, so here's another practice, because it's 180 degrees opposite, right? It may take a while for it to click in, because usually, and not just you, not just us, but anyone, even in sports, they'll get them to breathe in. They're breathing in energy, and they're letting go of used energy. Okay, but that's what the drop does. That's what form does. To see the formless moving, it's opposite. So our whole lives, that's how we understood. You're breathing in oxygen or you're breathing in energy. Now, what you're breathing in is you're going to your computer, and then your computer is, it's really matrix stuff. It's bringing into form. Now, I think this is quite simple, yet profound. I think anyone can do this, but you need to switch your mind. So I'm going to be sharing this at the retreat, and we're going to be recording it as a new process, right? But I would like you guys to start now before we come to the retreat. And when we meet next week at the retreat, at the FTW, the pre-retreat, I want you to tell me what's been happening for you. All right? One sec, Jack. Okay, so please do that. Something that will help me is, and if you're not close to an ocean, you will be, because most of you are coming to Sydney, right? Go and sit at the beach, watch the breath coming out, listen to it, and listen to it go back into the ocean. Okay? So you're watching the waves roll in and out, right? You can even hear it. The ocean is breathing, right? It breathes in, it goes back to itself. It breathes out, it rolls out into the sand. It's the opposite. It breathes in, the ocean breathes in, it goes, listen to the sound. It breathes out, it will change your mindset. You'll start to see it. And from now on, when you breathe, and many years ago when my mom said, just take 3 breaths, here I am as a drop going, they're like, yeah, I get it. Like I connect to it, but we're talking about being it, not connecting to it. Remember in manifestation, we talked about the 3 levels: creation, manifestation, transformation. At the top level, at the later stage of your process, you're being it. You're embodying it. You're not using it. You're embodying it. You're becoming it. So that's our session.